Good afternoon. Welcome to the 330 Sports Show. My name is Justin Coffin, not in studio as you can see today, but it is Tuesday, August 27th. We're going to do a little bit of an Ohio State 2024 preview for you. So, a lot to cover. We're going to go over offense, defense, some of the skill players you should be looking for, some of the college football playoff stuff. So, stay with us and we're going to get right into that. So this is obviously a huge year for not only Ryan Day, but the Ohio State football program as a whole. We've kind of gone all in this offseason. You have 12, maybe 13 guys that could be playing in the NFL that have returned for their senior years. And there's a lot at stake. You've dropped three in a row. Uh, whatever you believe might or might not have happened. You've lost three in a row to Michigan. You got to get that monkey off your back. You haven't won a playoff game since 2020. So there's a lot to get done here for Ryan Day and the Ohio State Buckeyes. But you bring in Chip Kelly as your new OC, Jim Knowles entering his third year as defensive coordinator. There's a lot of talent on this team. So let's get into it. We've obviously been covering the Buckeyes since the inception of the show back in 2020, and that year they went to the national title game, the COVID year, which they played like 5 regular season games, beat Clemson in the playoff and Northwestern in the Big Ten title game, and ended up falling to Alabama in the championship game. Those years seem very far away and very, very different. Since then you've had a ton of talent in and out of this program, but this year's team, maybe there's a few questions here or there, but this year's team might have the best talent of all those previous teams. And they're going to need every bit of that talent. 134 schools vying for, the 12 spots in the playoff. We know theoretically 11 of those 12 spots are going to the Big Ten, SEC, ACC, and Big 12 with one group of five, now kind of group of four, whatever you want to call it, getting in as well. So, Ohio State is one of those teams. They actually have the best odds to make the playoffs. They were minus 650 to get in the playoffs. But, there's going to be a lot of teams vying for those spots, which should make this season very, very interesting. And something I always say, I'm an Ohio State alum. I'm an Ohio State fan for as long as I can remember. But honestly, sometimes, and I'm not speaking to anybody in particular, but sometimes certain individuals, loud individuals in our fan base, I think can come off as pretty spoiled, pretty arrogant, pretty obnoxious, and that's true of any of these fan bases on this screen. But I think sometimes you got to take a step back and realize how good you have it, and realize. And I understand with the Ohio State standard comes high expectations, but Ohio State and Michigan are tied for the best winning percentage in the history of college football, with Alabama right behind them, Notre Dame behind them, and you go on down the line of it's just major program: Oklahoma, Texas, USC, Penn State, Nebraska, Tennessee, Florida State, Georgia, LSU, Miami, all up in that group, up in the top 15 there. But just sometimes you got to remember how good you have it, and sometimes you got to take a bit of a look back. So Jim Tressel took over this program in the year 2001, excuse me. So the last 23 years, Ohio State is 242 and 46 in that time, which is an 840 winning percentage. So between Tressel, you had the 1 year in 2011 of Luke Fickell, then Urban Meyer comes in, and then Ryan Day takes his spot. You've had it very good. I've had it very good. But we all know championships are hard to come by. So Jim Tressel, in that historic season of 2002, had a national title. And then in 2014, a year that, you lose to Virginia Tech in game 2, you probably don't even think you're going to make the playoff. And you get in as a 4 seed, you beat Alabama, and then you beat Oregon in the national championship game. And two unlikely titles there, maybe, if you look at it, things like that. But this is a program that has finished um, in the last 23 seasons 19 times in the top 10. Top 25 finishes, 21 of 23. So all of those seasons except for 2001 and 2011. And 2011 was kind of a, I hate to say a throwaway year, but it's kind of an asterisk year for Ohio State. And then, as bad as things have been in the past 3 years, you have to take a quick snapshot and look at the record. So, over the last 23 years, Ohio State and Michigan have played 22 times. You take out the 2020 game because of COVID. Um, Ohio State is 17-5 in those games. So, obviously, they were 17-2 going into 3 years ago. And, Michigan has kind of changed the pace, but this is a must win year for the Buckeyes. But again, remember how good you have it. Trying to stay positive here. So earlier around Big Ten Media Days, Denzel Burke, another Ohio State great cornerback, but Denzel Burke was asked and basically said, it's a natty or bust. That's our mentality. No excuses. We got to win it all. So this is a guy that probably would have been a late first, early second round draft pick last year, comes back for his senior year and wants to get it done. So he is putting it all out on the line. He is maybe not the best player on Ohio State's defense, but he's in that top three, top four group. But he is the vocal leader of that group, and for him to go out and say that, that's big because it puts the the pressure, whatever you want to say, on that Ohio State defense and offense to go. Speaking of that defense, let's take a look at the depth chart. Now, Jim Knowles, this is his third year, entering his third year, came over from Oklahoma State and previously Duke before that and some other schools in there. But he plays a 4-2-5 look defense. This is the most likely, in my opinion, too deep for Ohio State. So you have Jack Sawyer, who came back for his senior year, also a captain this year. Tyleik Williams also could have went to the NFL. Ty Hamilton will be an NFL player next year. JT Tuamola, excuse me if I butchered that name, but he could be in the NFL right now. Came back. Cody Simon, who will wear your block O, and your other defensive captain is, highly touted by his teammates. I've heard beat reporters say he's, if they could pick one person to be a future president, that would be him. So you have a dynamic older guy as your leader in that linebacking room as well. Then you got two guys that are uber talented but haven't quite put it all together on the field in Sonny Styles or CJ Hicks that are going to be your dynamic linebackers, get to the ball fast, speed, all that stuff, can cover, can hit, can run, do all that stuff. So you got a dynamic linebacking core. It's just they got to put it all together. In the secondary, my opinion, the best secondary in the country. It's led by Denzel Burke in the sense of the vocal leader, as I mentioned earlier. He will be backed up by Jermaine Matthews, but Jermaine Matthews is a future NFL cornerback himself. Davison Igbinosun came in from Ole Miss 2 years ago. He is going to be a very dynamic cornerback because a lot of times Denzel Burke gets the best receiver or often shadows someone. He will, quarterbacks will throw away from him, which will give Igbinosun a lot of attention, but he can get the job done. He'd be the number one corner on probably 14 of the 18 Big Ten teams in the Big Ten. Calvin Simpson Hunt, Aaron Scott, both highly touted sophomore and freshman players that are in that backup. Jordan Hancock at the nickel or slot corner, whatever you want to call it. Great cover guy that can get after it. Returned a huge interception last year against Rutgers in a game that was kind of oddly close for a while. But he is a guy that's going to step up and make a lot of plays. You got Lorenzo Styles, Sonny's backup, who is a Notre Dame transfer that came over as a wide receiver initially. So he's got good hands and quick feet. So that'd be we'll see how often he sees the field. But then at the safety positions, this is kind of you got some hard hitting guys, good tackling, and also great cover guys in the back end of your defense here. And this is a safety driven defense. So Caleb Downs, the arguably the number one player on defense in the country, comes in as a sophomore, transferred from Alabama. Once Nick Saban left, he entered the transfer portal. He led Alabama, a playoff team last year, in tackles as a true freshman. So he's only going to take a jump up, get better, and go from there. You got Malik Hartford backing him up. Lathan Ransom, I believe, is his fifth year in the program, has struggled with some injuries, but really took a step forward last year and looks to be, that other safety back there in the back with Caleb Downs to kind of lock it down and hopefully shut down the run, but also hold hold the offenses to minimal gain. Let's switch sides of the ball and let's go to the offensive side of things. Now, the offense is once again loaded with talent. The defense might be the best in the country. I think it's easy to say the defense is a top 5 defensive team in the country. Now, on the offensive side of the ball, there's a few more questions. However, this side of the ball is just as loaded as the defensive side. Now, when you think Ohio State over the last few years, outside of last year, you think at the quarterback position, going back Dwayne Haskins, even, JT Barrett. But really the renaissance occurred when Justin Fields and Dwayne Haskins came in. And then you jump to CJ Stroud, who has just lit the NFL on fire in his rookie year. Last year, you took a step back with Kyle McCord, just wasn't the kind of alpha type leader they needed in that locker room. But this year, you bring in a transfer quarterback. A lot of people say, well, he's going to be Kansas State's backup. That's because Kansas State recruited their highest ranked quarterback prospect ever, and that guy would have transferred. So you keep him. Kansas State kept him. Will Howard, who got, I believe, a 4th round draft, grade, could have went to the NFL last year, decides to transfer, enter Ryan Day, Chip Kelly's system, wins the job over. This is the best quarterback room maybe Ohio State has ever had, and I say that knowing that CJ Stroud was once there, Justin Fields was once there, but let me just say maybe the deepest room they've ever had. Will Howard, dynamic quarterback, an improving passer, not like a Michael Vick type runner, but a runner that's going to be able to get it done. And I have heard reports out of camp that he is one of the fastest players in the open field on the entire team, which is crazy. But because this guy's 6'4", 6'5", 230. Behind him, you have Devin Brown. He is entering, I believe this is his 4th year, or it might be his 3rd year. I have to check on that. But then you have true freshman Julian Sayin. So they're really good at the quarterback position. Julian Sayin was the number 1 quarterback entering this season. Hopefully he doesn't have to play, but if they're going to be up a lot in these early games, might as well get him some action. So I think Julian Sayin is the future quarterback for Ohio State next year. So, but you have a nice, dependable backup in Devin Brown, ready in case Will Howard, maybe goes down for a play or God forbid gets injured. But let's stay positive and go to the running back position here. Now, I put TreVeyon Henderson as the starter, but Quinshon Judkins probably is the best back in the country. So TreVeyon Henderson, Quinshon Judkins, Lightning Thunder, whatever you want to call them, going to be a great 1-2 combination. And Chip Kelly coming in this year loves to run the ball. So you're going to see a more dynamic rushing attack from Ohio State this year than maybe you've seen since 2019 or maybe even going pre-Urban Meyer days. back to Jim Tressel. So we'll see. However, Will Howard out there kind of just needs to be a point guard, distribute the ball, run when needed, and get the ball to your playmakers. And do they have playmakers? They have Emeka Ibuka, who's going to be probably a first round pick next year. You got Carnell Tate, a dynamic sophomore. And then you have the number one player in the entire recruiting class of 2024, Jeremiah Smith, coming in as your third receiver. Behind them, you got Brandon Innes, Mylan Graham, another highly touted freshman, and then a kind of an older guy, Jaden Ballard from Massillon, Washington. Uh, Tall, lanky, fast, strong, all those dynamic words. He just hasn't put it together. So if he can put it together, you might see him back at punt return, kick return, whatever. But they have, let's just say, they're not lacking skill at the wide receiver position under Brian Hartline. You know, the tight end position. This is a little bit of a question, but you got G. Scott Jr., who is kind of your elder statesman in that room. You bring in Will Kesmerick from Ohio University. He is kind of a do-it-all guy, not great at anything, but pretty good at all three. And then you got Jelani Thurman, who is potentially your big-time future NFL tight end. He just hasn't had time to, develop yet. So we'll see if he takes a step forward this year. G. Scott, one of the team leaders this year as well. So they have the pieces. They can get it done. So this is a standard 11 personnel offense I would put out there with 3 wide receivers, 1 tight end, 1 running back. But I think you're going to see tons of different formations out of Chip Kelly and Ryan Day. At the offensive tackle, or I'm sorry, at the offensive line position, that's kind of the big question from last year. All reports are from, and we've had Steve Hellwagon on, listening to Bill Landis and Doug Maurice on Kings of Columbus. They have said really good things that they've seen in the lead up to the season in camp about this offensive line. They think Josh Simmons is a potential top 2-3 round pick in the NFL. The transfer from San Diego State that came in last year, not highly touted at all, has taken a huge leap and looks to lead at that left tackle position. Donovan Jackson, the elder statesman, at least from the Buckeyes perspective, has been there now for a while, looks to be your left guard. At center, you bring in the transfer from Alabama, Seth McLaughlin. And then right guard really seems to be the only question right now. Is it going to be Carson Hinsman? Is it going to be Tegra Shabola? I don't know. As of now, I don't know if they've named starter, but either way, I think you're in a good spot there because Carson Hinsman wasn't quite ready last year, but was your starting center the entire year last year. He can play guard or center. So either way, if he doesn't start, you can plug a guy right in. Tashbola has all the characteristics to make a great lineman. So we'll see what he does. Josh Fryer last year kind of got beat in some certain key situations, but he looks to be much improved, got in the weight room, improved his speed, his strength, all that good stuff. And he looks to take a huge step forward at right tackle this year. So Ohio State, big time questions on the offensive line, but it's seemingly got answered in the offseason based on the eye test. It looks like they're going to be much improved on the offensive line. And if they are, they're going to be able to run the ball. And if they can give Will Howard just some time to get it out to his weapons, this offense could be very, very, very scary. So speaking of those weapons, let's talk about this dynamic duo at running back. Travion Henderson, Quinshon Judkins. Travion Henderson entering his 4th season, has played 3 seasons, but has been injury prone during that time. So far he has 446 carries for over 2,700 yards, 6.2 average. He is your big play guy. 32 touchdowns in 31 games. Actually 37 if you include the receptions. So he has got big playability written all over him. Quinshon Judkins, also can make the big play. However, he is more of your pound back. He can go get you your 3, 4, 5 yards per carry. And as you can see right there from his numbers, he has done just that. 26 games in his career, 2,725 yards. So only 20 yards behind Travion Henderson in 5 less games. So he is the real deal, and these two are both going to be running in the NFL next season. Let's take a look now at the some of the wide receivers. Here are the all-time leaders in Ohio State receiving yardage. I think this is an easy, safe bet, but Emeka Ibuka needs 1,041 yards to become Ohio State's all-time leading receiver, passing up Michael Jenkins. So look at some of these names on here: Michael Jenkins, Chris Olave, David Boston, Marvin Harrison Jr., Devin Smith, and then you go down the line: Chris Carter, KJ Hill, Santonio Holmes. You got NFL guys all over that list, but Emeka Ibuka sitting right now at 17. He has 1,857 yards in his career, but only needs 1,041 to surpass the all-time Ohio State career receiving yardage leader, Michael Jenkins. And if we ask, can he do that? Absolutely. Just look at in 2022, he had 1,151 yards that year. So this is a guy that has all the potential in the world. He was one of the best receivers in the country, but basically was banged up the entire season last year. So we're hoping for big things out of Emeka Ibuka in 2024, going to be the leader of that wide receiver unit. And Emeka Ibuka and Travion Henderson are the two captains on offense for the Ohio State Buckeyes in 2024. And it's awesome to have great role models like that, because you have guys like Jeremiah Smith. He is the future. Julian Sayin and Jeremiah Smith are the future of this Buckeye offense. You're probably not going to see much of Julian Sayin this year, but Jeremiah Smith very well could break and maybe even shatter all the Ohio State freshman records this year. I don't want to put a ton on him. I'm not going to say he's going to have 1,000 yards or 10 touchdowns or anything like that, but I think you're going to see him break Chris Carter's freshman records at Ohio State. And every single player on this Buckeye defense has talked about how good this guy is. And Chip Kelly and Ryan Day has said, if you give this guy, get him one-on-one, the ball's going to him. All right, let's get down to the nitty-gritty of the schedule. Buckeyes open the season this weekend at home against the Akron Zips. Should be a big victory. I believe they're 50.5-point favorites. So, 7 touchdowns and a 2-point conversion are hopefully going to get the job done versus the Akron Zips. Then you got Western Michigan and Marshall. All the first 3 games in the shoe this year. You have Michigan State, first road game. You come back for Iowa, a big one at Oregon, a home game versus Nebraska, which Nebraska could very easily be 7-0 coming into that game. You're at Penn State, which is another huge one. Home for Purdue, at Wrigley Field in Northwestern this year. They're rebuilding their stadium out there. Home for Indiana, and then home for Michigan. So we know what looms at the end of the season, but this is an Ohio State team. You really circled the 3 big games on the schedule. Home for Michigan, at Oregon, and at Penn State. Is Iowa going to be tough? Probably. Is Nebraska going to be tough? Maybe. But, assuming Ohio State takes care of business in 9 of their 12 games, you look at those other 3 games and say, those are the games that are definitely circled on the calendar for all Ohio State fans and players and alumni and whatever you want to say, that those are the games that are going to make or break this season. And of course, the game that looms large, I mentioned already, the Ohio State-Michigan game. Ohio State's got to take care of business in that game, and they just have to. If you ask me, Ohio State's going to lose one game this season in the regular season. I would say that game would be at Oregon based on, right now looking at the lines, I believe it's almost a pick 'em. I think it was Ohio State was a 1 point underdog as of today, but again, a lot can change in 6 weeks or so before. But this game looms towards the end of the season, November 30th in Columbus. No Jim Harbaugh, no Connor Stallions, no off the field drama. Just go out, be the better team that day, and that's what it comes down to. So my opening day prediction right now, Akron, number 2 Ohio State, 3:30 CBS. Ohio State, as I mentioned earlier, 50.5 point favorites with the total only being 58.5. So Vegas sees this kind of being a 51-7 type game for Ohio State, or 54, it could be 54-3, whatever it might be. So my prediction, I'm going over. I think Ryan Day and the offense are going to do whatever they can to probably get some of those big name guys off the field. But when they have a chance to get Devin Brown or Julian Sayin or some of these other guys some work on offense, especially guys like Jaden Ballard, Brandon Innes, maybe you put Carnell Tate as your 1 out there because he might very well be your 1 or your 2 next year. I think they're going to throw the ball a little bit, but their running game is going to be very, very good. And the defense, I gave Akron a touchdown, but I don't think they're going to. I don't know. I'm giving them a touchdown because they're from the 3-3-0. We respect the Akron Zips, but I don't think I don't think they're going to see the end zone. But I'm going to say 63-7. Ohio State gets the cover and the over hits here comfortably. So that's my prediction. We'll see what happens on Saturday. But either way, it should be a very comfortable win for the Buckeyes. And Ohio State, as I mentioned, they had that early schedule in the non-conference this year. Michigan right now leads with 45 conference championships, their last one being in 2023. Let's get Ohio State to that 40 mark this year and go win it in 2024. All right, let's take a quick look at the new college football format playoffs. So 5+7. So what that means, the top 4 champions from the Big Ten, SEC, ACC, and Big 12 are going to get an automatic bye in the first round. The winner of that conference championship game will get a top 4 seed. The other non-group of 5, the highest champion, will get an automatic bid to the playoffs. Now, that could fall anywhere from 5 to, technically it could be a top 4. Let's hypothetically say, like a run like Cincinnati a few years back, they would have actually been higher than the Big East or than the ACC champion that year, Pitt. So Cincinnati would have been your 4 seed and Pitt would have been a little bit further down. So something hypothetical like that, if let's say a Boise State or a Liberty somehow is higher ranked than maybe the Big 12 champ, let's say the Big 12 champ is Utah and they are 10-2, but maybe Liberty is 12-0 and they're ranked higher, maybe they get the 4 seed. But let's just for the purpose of this, let's just say those major 4 conferences get the top 4 seeds. Notre Dame cannot receive a first round bye because they do not play in a conference. They cannot play in a conference championship game, so thus they can't win their conference. However, Notre Dame can treat that week, because they're not going to be playing that week, as their bye, and then they're right into the playoffs before that. So that's a way to look at it if you're a Notre Dame Fighting Irish fan. So these games are going to be taking place all over the month of December and into January. So you got your first round games Friday and Saturday, December 20th and 21st. The quarterfinals will be on New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. Then you got your playoff semifinals on January 9th and 10th, and then your national championship game, which is stretched out all the way to January 20th this year. This next graphic shows um, all the teams that would have that made the playoffs over the past 2014 to 2023. So these are the teams that made the playoffs during that time. Uh, so finishing in the top four: Alabama 8 times, Clemson 6, Ohio State 5, Oklahoma 4, Georgia 3, Michigan 3, Washington 2, Notre Dame 2, and then one time each was LSU, Florida State, TCU, Texas, Michigan State, Cincinnati, and Oregon. Those teams all would have been made the playoffs during those. That's how many times they made the playoffs during that time frame. Something you may not have known is Ohio State would have made the playoffs every single year from 2014 to 2023 if it was expanded to 12. So you look at that, no more than two losses in a season, and that was 2017, where they lost in the playoffs. But every other year, they would have been at the end of the regular season were ranked no lower than seventh, which is very, very impressive. And again, I go back to that. The standard is high at Ohio State, thus the expectations are high for the Buckeyes. And remember, conference realignment has changed, so you're seeing a 16-team SEC. You add in Texas and Oklahoma this year to the previous 14 schools that were in the SEC last year. The Big Ten now is 18 teams. You add the four West Coast schools. You add the two LA schools, UCLA, USC. You add Oregon, and you add Washington to that mix. I still crack up at the Atlantic Coast Conference because you add a team from Texas, you add SMU, and you add two West Coast Pacific Ocean teams in Stanford and Cal to that mix of the schools. So you have 17 teams in the ACC. I like to even say Notre Dame kind of as an ACC team based on the schedule they play, but yeah, let's just call it a 17 team ACC. And to me, this is maybe the most interesting conference going into 2024, the Big 12, with, you know, you got a whole bunch of teams in there. You got a lot of the Pac 12 schools and Big 12 schools have kind of merged. There are a lot of different interesting teams in this. And I think this is going to be the most interesting conference from top to bottom. I personally like Utah to win it, but I can see Kansas State winning it. I've heard people say West Virginia. I've heard lots of different things. And of course, you got the interesting Colorado Buffaloes in there, led by Deion Sanders. So I guess without further ado, I'm just going to give you my entire playoff bracket predictions. So I have Ohio State uh, winning the Big Ten, being the number one overall seed. I have Texas being the number two seed. I know a lot of people push back, oh, they lost their running backs and stuff. I get that. I actually did make this graphic about 2 weeks ago. So I made this on August 15th. But, I'm sticking with my predictions. I feel confident in it. So Texas, I have my number two seed. I have Miami as the three seed winning the ACC. That looks a little bit better after Florida State lost last week. And I have Utah as the number four team. You got sixth year quarterback, maybe seventh year quarterback, Cam Rising back, former five-star. Buckeye fans will remember him back when they played in the Rose Bowl. And then this is where things get interesting because in the first round, you have the higher seeded team hosting the lower seeded team on their campus. So that's going to make for exciting stuff this year, especially if a Southern team comes north and you're going to see some games played that maybe you traditionally wouldn't see. So in this prediction, I have as my 5 seed the Oregon Ducks hosting the Liberty Flames, and I think Liberty is going to be 12-0. I think they get that non-group of 4 spot, and they are the 12 seed. So I got Oregon beating Liberty. In the 6-11 game, Georgia. I think Georgia is one of the top 2, 3, 4 teams in the country. However, their schedule is brutal, absolutely brutal. I have Georgia going 10-2, and I have Georgia being the 6th overall seed in the playoffs. I have them beating Florida State, who right now it doesn't look like Florida State might make the playoff after their week 0 loss to Georgia Tech, but we'll see. But in this scenario, I have Georgia beating Florida State and then moving on to the second round to play the Miami Hurricanes. The 7-10 game, I have Penn State hosting Missouri, and I think that's going to be very interesting. But I have Missouri upsetting in this. I don't know what the line would be at the time. Things can change, but I have Missouri actually upsetting Penn State, moving on to the quarterfinals and taking on Texas. And then maybe the most intriguing game, the 8-9 game, I have the Notre Dame Fighting Irish taking on the Alabama Crimson Tide in Notre Dame Stadium. I do have Alabama winning, but I could see that game going either way. So I think that's pretty awesome, though. Alabama, Notre Dame to be playing each other potentially in sometime in December. So look at the second round. I have Ohio State beating Alabama in a rematch of a 2014 season, 2015 game. Ohio State moving on to the semis. I have Oregon beating Utah. I don't think that would be an upset, but I think Oregon's one of the top 4 teams in the country, but only Ohio State or Oregon or whoever wins the Big Ten can be be a top 4 seed. I have Miami losing to Georgia, Georgia moving on to the semifinals, and then I have Texas beating an SEC foe and moving on to the quarterfinals. So it's an interesting thing. In my semifinals, I have 2 Big Ten teams playing each other. I have Ohio State and Oregon, with Ohio State moving on to the championship game, and I have I have Georgia and Texas playing, and I have Georgia winning, and I have Ohio State and Georgia in a rematch from that epic 2022 game. And Ohio State this time gets redemption and wins. Unfortunately, I think that game might be in Atlanta, but we'll take our chances. So Ohio State beats Georgia for the national championship. That is my prediction. That is my playoff bracket. Tell me where you agree. Tell me where you. I want to thank you for watching, listening. Please remember we're a Youngstown studio production. Yes, I have a little bit of an Ohio State bias here, but I do truly think Ohio State has the best team in the country. I know Ryan Day gets a lot of heat, but I think Ryan Day is one of the best college football coaches going. And, Will Howard might not be the best quarterback in Ohio State history, but I think he is going to light it up this year. And I think you're going to see that running game get going. I think you're going to see those skill positions on the outside get going. And I think you're going to see an absolutely dominant defense from Jim Knowles and the Buckeyes. So Ryan Day, Chip Kelly, Jim Knowles, and the Buckeyes get it done for the 2024 national championship. Again, it is August 27th. That is my pick. My playoff bracket was made August 15th, but I like it and I'm sticking with it. So hopefully I'm right. We'll see. You guys can clip this and tell me if I'm wrong later, but go Buckeyes, and that's what I'm going to. Thanks for watching. And again, please remember, we are a Youngstown studio production. Make sure to follow, like, share, all that good stuff. 330 Sports Show is on Instagram, it's on Facebook, and it is on X. Youngstown Studio is on big time on YouTube now. So make sure you go follow the Youngstown Studio YouTube page. It is also on Facebook and on X. So go follow on those platforms, and we appreciate you watching, listening. Everybody have a great day. We'll see you soon, and go Buckeyes.
Thank you for listening to this show on Youngstown Studio. This is original Youngstown content. Feel free to share our videos and tell your friends about us. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Facebook. Thank you for your support.